In this video, I begin to draw the design according to the sizes and notes that I've taken from the templates. I start by marking up a centre line in the centre window. You could say that this is the most important part of the whole process. Obviously, the templates are important, but they weren't done by me. So for me, this is probably what I spend most time on. It's got to be accurate to the millimetre. And also the spacing between the windows has got to be very carefully marked up. So that's something that your templater will also make a note of. Unless you template it yourself, in which case you'll make a note of it. So you have to have the outside making size, and then you have to have the cutting size, which will be 7mm in from the outside edge. And for those of you who work with leaded glass, you'll understand that that's to do with the dimensions of the perimeter leading. So all the time I'm double checking my measurements, I'm double checking against the templates, and I'm really taking my time. I'm checking everything is square and true. A mistake at this point would really be a disaster. So all the time I'm referring back to my templates, double, triple checking everything. I don't always have to draw my designs by hand. Quite often I work in more modern churches. This is a church that's 100 years old, which I realise in the context of churches isn't that old, but I work in Catholic churches, and so for a Catholic church that is old. So most of the time I work in churches that were built between the 1930s and the 1960s. And quite often I'm asked to do windows for them because they are replacing the frames. So old churches, like this one, the windows are going directly into a stone framework. But when I am working for churches where they're replacing frames, I can get the make sizes from the people making the frames. So they can send me over a computer image, and I can then draw my design on a computer, and then I can get my design printed to the correct size. So I'd say most of the time I don't need templates taken, and I'm not drawing by hand. And that's great because then there's no error, no margin of error that's going to creep in. It's quite a good idea to annotate your templates, especially one like this, because there's a lot of different pieces, and it's fine when it's laid out all over the floor like this. You can see what's fitting where, but when they've been rolled up and you take them over to your workshop, you're going to wonder what all the pieces are. So it's crucial really that at some point you get to lay it all out and make sure it's all going together and the measurements are all true, and you've put lots of notes on how things are fitting. My mother is very long suffering. She's got a nice big sort of through kitchen lounge, and she's let me stack all the furniture up on one side so I can lay this out. There have been times when I've worked on windows that are so big that I've had to hire a hall to lay them out. But then of course you're under quite a lot of time pressure because it can take days, or when I say days, it can take maybe a whole day sometimes to draw a design. And actually I can't crawl around on the floor for a solid day. I start to seize up. So, because you find you're actually leaning on your arms and shoulders the whole time, and I'm not strong enough really. So it's nice to be able to do it in bursts of a couple of hours. Luckily I was able to do that in a domestic setting here. And as you can see, I am referring back constantly to the templates and the measurements to check I've got everything absolutely right. One thing I found quite helpful was videoing Brian when he came over with the templates. They were so complex for this window. And if I ever had a sort of ambiguity in my head as to what something meant, I could go back to the film I'd made and double check what Brian had said. So that was really helpful. So I think I might do that as a matter of course in future, whether or not I'm going to put something on YouTube, because it was really very, very helpful. This window has got a matrix of supporting bars on the outside. And at the moment I am drawing in where those bars will show so that I can take account of them when I'm doing my design, and hopefully design in a way that's sympathetic to where the bars are placed. It's only once I've noted all these things down on my design that I can get on to drawing the actual image that I'm going to be cutting from glass. So I'm roughing out my design for the church window that I'm doing, and I'm using an applique technique to help me lay things out with flexibility to move things around, and I can stand back and look at the design and see how it's working and then reposition things. And the other reason this works well is if I sketch things in with a pencil, when I stand back over a window this size, I can't actually see the pencil. So I've cut out a load of flowers, a load of leaves, and then I'm using masking tape to represent the stalks. While I'm laying out my design, I've always got half a mind on the fact that I'm going to have to cut this from glass. So I need to put in construction lines or cutting lines that make it possible not only to cut my design from a piece of glass, but also that the resulting panel will be strong enough. These upright windows are divided into 3, for example, and I have to remember that I'm going to be taking a line across so that I can divide it up in a way that won't cut through a flower, for example. And quite often these leaves are going to be useful for taking a cutting line across to the edge of the glass. So I've got most of the flowers and the leaves laid out, and now I'm going to put in some cut lines across the windows, which are structural, and they will split the different panels down into smaller panels so that they are easier to manoeuvre when they're being fitted. I'm adding colour to this template in chalk pastels, partly because it will help me when I come to cutting, and also it will help me stand back and look at the balance. I don't always do colour on my templates, but I think it's very helpful on this occasion. It's probably worth mentioning that the applique flowers that I've positioned around my design are just blown up images that I took off the internet. When I come to actually make the window, each one of these flowers will be painted by hand, and they'll all be different. And later in the design process I will draw each flower so that I've got a design to work from. So they won't all be uniform in the way they look now. It's just a quick method for helping me lay things out. Another trick I've learned for laying out my designs is to stand back and take a photograph and then look at the image on my camera. And it's strange how you get a different perception of what you're seeing if you look at it on a camera screen. And also you can change the design and refer back to earlier photographs that you took and decide which one is more successful, and you can chart the progress of your design in a way that's really very helpful. So I would suggest you take photographs as you work.